Before we get started with the actual drawing, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what rendering actually is. Okay, at least get a little more in depth with it. All right. So rendering, right, is the technique where you add shading and texture to make something look more realistic. Okay, and to make something look more realistic, the idea is you're basically just trying to make it look three-dimensional, right? Because reality is in 3 dimensions. So anything you do is trying to create that illusion of 3 dimensions. Okay. So Patrick, right? If you look at Patrick, this drawing of Patrick, he is 2 dimensional. 2 dimensional. Why? Because he's very flat. All right. A more clear example is if you have a square and a cube, right? We know that a square is a 2 dimensional object because it's very flat, right? And we know a cube is a 3 dimensional object. All right. We know that a cube is a 3 dimensional object because it has one thing that the 2 dimensional thing doesn't, and that is depth. Okay, it looks like not only 2 dimensions has length, right? The length and the width, right, or the height, right? There's 2 dimensions. 1, 2. Oh, sorry, wrong way. 1, 2. Okay. If you look at the cube, however, right, the cube has 3 dimensions. It has the length right here, the width, which is this vertical, right here, this vertical, and then the height. Then the depth of it, right? The depth of it is what goes back, right? So when we measure, that's why when we do math, right, we do length times width times height, right? Depth is kind of like we replace width with depth with width, width, and then we add height, right? We just change the terminology, but notice that there are 3 measurements there: length, width, height, right? Versus the rectangle, just the rectangle, which is just length, width, 2 dimensions, two different measurements, 3 dimensions, 3 different measurements. Okay, so now how do we make this look like a 3 dimensional? How do we make this look like a 3 dimensional object? We give it something in art called form. All right. So form is it's what I said earlier. It's the illusion or the technique where you give something depth. Okay. And usually that is through shadows, right? Shadows, highlights, those things. When light hits an object, okay, and it has depth, then it'll cast these shadows. You'll have different shadows, right? But if something is flat, like the picture of Patrick, the reference of Patrick, actually, there are no shadows, right? There are no shadows that make it have form. Okay, all you have are flat lines and flat shapes. So we're gonna try to take. I know the reference doesn't look like this, but we're gonna try to take Patrick from this flat shape to a rendered 3 dimensional character.